Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Little. I'm in the Department of English at Niagara University, and I want to welcome you to English 343 Writing and Well-Being. This course addresses a new interdisciplinary field at the intersection of, as you might imagine, writing and reading as well, and well-being. And this new field kind of involves a variety of different academic disciplines from psychology and counseling to English and rhetoric and linguistics to medicine as well as the arts. And so, if you're interested in any of those areas, which pretty well span the academy, I think this course could be for you. We will read several of the classic texts in the field and get familiar with the research in this area. But this course isn't just about research. This is also a place for you to develop your own free writing practice, and I'll of course explain what that means later. But you'll have plenty of time in class this short semester, this summer semester, to develop your own free writing practice and reflect on it. And the idea here is to basically become an informed practitioner, right? Free writing is a great skill to help all of us cope with the mess of life and to help implement free writing in other areas of our lives, whether we're in education or counseling or the arts or medicine. And so this is a course that allows you to kind of develop both sides, read the research so you're informed on what's likely to be predicted from free writing, as well as practice your own free writing and see how you experience it. Okay, so since this is an online course, I thought I would start by just showing you, for any of you not familiar with Canvas, how to get to the Canvas site and get to our course materials. If you already know how to get to Canvas, I'd say just go ahead and get there now. What I do to get to Canvas, you can just Google Niagara University Canvas. It's from my browser at least, the first link. And if you need the URL, it is just here. It's a secure site, right? So it's https://niagara.instructure.com/login/LDAP. So go ahead and log in here. This should be your standard MyNU login credentials, your Purple Pass credentials. And then once you're on this screen, yours will look a little different than mine, of course, but look for this course. I hope it shows the same way as mine does, which it's titled officially Studies in Rhetorical Theory. That's the general name for all of these sorts of courses. And then the subtitle for us is Writing and Well-Being, which doesn't show up here simply because there isn't enough room. So that's our course for the semester. Dive in here. And I'm going to switch to student view so I am seeing what you're seeing. So this will match up better. Okay, so here's your Canvas homepage for our course. And I suggest, so the home link, which is where we are now, is a place where it's a kind of repository where I tried to deposit all of the various materials you need to look at. They're also available in some of these side links, okay? What I would suggest doing to start is simply download all of these readings. If you've had a chance to look at the syllabus, you know that you have 2 books are required for this course, as well as these readings. So I would suggest just downloading these to your desktop, to your laptop. That way you have them for reading in the future. You can read them online through Canvas. I don't find this particularly useful to be reading online, but you can. What I'd suggest is clicking here. For myself, that just downloads it right to the desktop, and then you'll have all of the readings in this form. Okay, but however you want to handle it, these are the first tab here are the readings, and you'll need access to those. The next tab will be the 8 lectures for the class, the video lectures. Of course, we're doing lecture 1 right now. And you'll see on the syllabus when to watch these, when they're due. I would suggest watching the lectures before you do the associated readings. That way, as you're reading the texts, you've been kind of cued into what to read for, and it'll help you, I think, interpret the texts and be able to separate some of the derivative points from some of the more central points in the readings. Okay, and quizzes. There'll be 2 quizzes this semester. Um, they're just 8 points each, and I don't think we'll provide you with any surprises. They're not meant to be tricky. They're meant to get you to encourage you to engage some of the core concepts in the readings. And then now here we have the assignment handouts, and that these handouts really spell out each assignment for this course. But you don't actually upload your assignments here, so it's a little confusing. What you do to upload an assignment is you go here to assignment, and it'll list those same assignment handouts. But this is where you want to go to assignments when you actually want to complete one of your assignments. So let's say you want to do submit the Carr book review. You would just go here, and now this assignment sheet is the very same one we saw on the previous page. It's just duplicated here. So you would submit your assignment here, you'd browse, upload your Word document, hit submit, and you're all set. Okay? So, but we'll go back to this home page, and I think, so that's really everything you'd need here. You'll use home, assignments for submitting your assignments. Of course, you can see your grades under grade. You can go to quizzes to take the quizzes, or you can go here to take the quizzes, same thing. So now what I'd like to do is, assuming you've paused the video so far and downloaded all your readings, which I would think is step 1, step 2 is to go to this syllabus tab and then download that syllabus, because that's really what will guide you this semester. Okay, this is a fast-paced semester, right? It's, I think, we have 17 days together this summer online, and a typical semester is 14 to 15 weeks, right? So that's we're almost covering, a week's material in a day in this expedited summer course. And so what I've tried to do is really streamline the course so it's not confusing. We don't want to have confusion adding into the problem of an accelerated course. So anyhow, hopefully by now you've downloaded the syllabus and have it somewhere on your desktop. And let's just step through some of the material. I'm not going to read through this entire syllabus, don't worry. I will say this is a contract between you and me, right? This syllabus. So please do read the full syllabus for your own best interest, okay? In the interest of time today, we won't cover the full thing, the full syllabus now. I'll say, if you're interested, the way this course works best, I think, is if we're in communication, right, frequently throughout the semester. Since it's an online course, we don't have scheduled office hours, but I'm willing to meet with anyone in my office at school on campus, Dunleavy 351, at a time that works for both of us. I'm around most days and am available, and so if you want to meet with me, make use of that opportunity. Secondly, I'll mention here, I think this course works best when, ideally, students submit rough drafts of their work in advance of the deadline via email for feedback, right? And so, for instance, when you first write your Nicholas Carr book review, hopefully you'll get it done a few days in advance, and we'll be able to email it to me and say, hey, Dr. Little, here's my rough draft. Can you give me feedback on this? I'll do my best to respond immediately. By immediately, I mean within 24 hours. And that will give you feedback to work on a second draft with those revisions in mind and then submit for a grade. If you really want to, we can continue, first draft, second draft, third draft in terms of shooting it back and forth, workshopping it for further revisions. It's just a matter of, your initiative and what you're looking for from the class. But typically that's the best way to improve your writing is, right, to workshop your writing with me one-on-one over email or in person in office hours. So if you want to email me a draft at some point, there's my email. Okay, readings. You'll need to buy these 2 texts. They are available at the bookstore. They're also available online. Carr's The Shallows is easy. Now, Pennebaker and Smythe. An earlier version of this text was just by James Pennebaker, and it was titled Opening Up. So don't mistakenly buy that one. You need to get the Pennebaker and Smythe 2016 version. That's the full title opening up by writing it down and then the subtitle. Okay, so buy those two books. The other scholarly articles are the ones you just downloaded PDF from Canvas. Excuse me. Plus 4 you'll find on your own. Okay. So the assignments this semester, there isn't a midterm, there isn't a final exam. There are those 2 quizzes plus these 4 writing assignments, okay? So what you'll do is you'll essentially write a book review for the Carr text, The Shallows, and then another book review for the Pennebaker and Smythe book. These book reviews are essentially identical. They are both 1,200 word reviews in which you summarize the book's main claims, discuss and evaluate the evidence, and offer a closing where you critique the book for an audience of your peers, namely the NU community. Okay? Now, I won't go into detail on this yet. I'll save the more elaborate discussion of these assignments for tomorrow's lecture to go with the assignment handouts, but this is just an overview. So you'll have 2 book reviews that are due on the dates at the end of the syllabus. You'll have your 2 quizzes, which are over the readings of that period. And then a longer term project is you will keep an annotated bibliography of the 11 scholarly articles that you read this semester. And that 7 of those articles have been provided by me. Those are the ones on Canvas. And that leaves you with the task of finding 4 additional articles to make up those 11 on your own. So you'll have to use, the library research databases online, find 4 more articles that in some way address writing and well-being broadly construed. And this is a place for you to kind of extend the course in the direction of your own interests, right? My job is to familiarize you with some of the classic texts, and these 4 articles that you choose are your way to tailor the course to your own interests. So you'll do both a summary and an evaluation of each text, and there are 11 texts, so that leads to a final product that you'll submit to me for a grade somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 words. Again, I'll go into greater detail on this in tomorrow's lecture. I will say at this point, students sometimes procrastinate on this assignment. It's an enormous assignment. 3,000 to 6,000 words is not something to be done over a night or two, right? So I would highly suggest, as you read each of your 11 articles, take the time right then and there to both summarize and evaluate it, right? Each summary and evaluation is just 250 to 500 words. So if you take these sort of one at a time over the course of the next 3.5 weeks, it's not a big deal. As I say, some students blow it off until the end, and then they email me and say, oh, I had no idea what it meant to write a 5,000 word assignment. I say, yes, that's the problem of procrastination, right? Finally, on the last day as well, you'll have a reflective essay due. So this is a place where you will keep your own free writing journal throughout this semester, okay? And that's for you to keep. That's a private journal that I will never ask to read, okay? But at the end of the semester, then you'll write a reflective essay describing the experience of having kept that journal for yourself, as well as connecting your experience with some of the claims and concepts from the readings. Okay? Again, I'll discuss this in greater length tomorrow. So that's conceptually what's going on. 2 book reviews, 2 quizzes, an annotated bibliography, and a reflective essay that comprises all of the points for the course, no midterm, no final. Grade will be calculated in a standard fashion, dictated here. Please do read through the writing policies, the course policies, and especially how to submit work to me for feedback. Notice I do have a late policy for turning in assignments, and continue to read through and be familiar with these procedures. This last page of the syllabus, if I were a student in class, this would probably be the most important to get my head around, because this spells out our itinerary for the 3.5 week course. Okay, so this is what's due on each of these days, right? So for today, you need to view the lecture 1, which is our current lecture, and then get started reading Carr's book, the first two chapters, right? Tomorrow, I'd start again by viewing lecture two, read chapters 3 to 5 of Carr, take that quiz by 10 p.m. Okay, so that's the syllabus. And then finally, let's have a brief discussion of the first two chapters of Carr's The Shallows, which are today's reading. Okay. So the first thing I want to mention is an important difference in reading styles, modes of reading. And if you're not familiar with these two terms, you really need to be, not just for this course, but for college, for life in general. Impressionistic reading. Now, in the academic world, this typically has a pejorative sense to it because what you do, I think of this as sort of kind of informal book club reading, right? You're in a book club, you're all reading you're all reading the same book and getting together to talk about it over dinner or something, right? So in a book club, unless you're in some rigorous book club, yeah, it's reasonable to just read the book, paying attention to what interests you, right? Impressionistic reading, just as it says, right? You're just sort of logging your impressions of the book. And it's very reader centered. You're reading for your own pleasure, for your own interest. And so, as you imagine, you might essentially collect a soup of facts, claims, opinions, evidence, anecdotes, and you're not really maybe even separating these in your mind. You're just finding interesting impressions to bring to book club, right? So what this lacks, of course, is a variety of things. But one is that you rarely get a sense of the overall structure of a book, or if it's an argument, a sense of the overall form that an argument might take, and the relationship between chapters, and the notion of theses and different chapter level theses. So this works for impressionistic reading, works for maybe reading for casual recreation, but it's not what we typically do in the university or in the professional world. And what we do there is deep reading. Okay, deep reading has fidelity to the goals of the author. It's not reader centric, right? It's not about as a reader, my interest in the book, my impressions of the book. No, deep reading is about the author's goals. Okay, so you're reading this as an artifact created by someone else, this book, and you're asking yourself, what are the author's goals? How does the author go about achieving those goals? And how successful is he or she at doing so? In our case, in reading nonfiction works, most scholarly works would fall into this category. One of the primary first steps in deep reading is to distinguish the main claims from the subordinate claims. Okay, that's key. Typically, in Carr's text, it's Carr's The Shallows. It's a great example of this because he has one main claim per chapter. Okay, and that's what I'll be looking for in your your assignment, the Carr book review, is that you understand his main claim per chapter, and then, time permitting, you discuss some of his secondary or tertiary or quaternary claims, right? For second, third, and fourth level claims. So that's step one. Step two is separating, facts from opinions and evidence from anecdotes. So there are times, say in Carr's text again, where he's drawing off of personal anecdotes of his own life. He's asking his friends whether they feel the same. And that's valid, that's useful. It's a form of evidence, but it's just, as we say, more personal, anecdotal, and, it's not rigorous. It's not evidence that's been engendered from a kind of methodological approach. So we think of that as anecdotal or personal. As opposed to other chapters in Carr's book, where he's drawing off of scientific research in neuroscience, for example, right? And that holds a higher standard for evidence, or must meet a higher standard for evidence to be published than, mere anecdote. So you should be paying attention to that difference as well. When is Carr discussing things from a personal point of view? When is he drawing off of research to support his point? And then in doing so, right, one of the main, aside from the things we've already discussed on deep reading here, a primary goal, or you might say a benefit of deep reading, is that when you understand at that bigger picture what the author is up to, the main claims of each chapter, you get a sense of the structure of the overall argument, right? In other words, you don't get lost in the details of the book. You understand the big picture and kind of the skeleton of the book, and can discuss the book in that way. And that will, if you read Carr's book and the rest of the books and articles in this class with this deep reading sensibility, you will really, I think, do much better on the assignments and have a better understanding of the general nature of these texts. Okay, so again, to repeat myself, for this class, probably for all academic classes, do not do not read impressionistically. That's for your leisure life. For your academic life, please do read as a deep reader. And so we'll look at the first two chapters of Carr's book with that deep reader mentality in mind. So chapter 1, titled Hal and Me, right? I should mention at this point the digressions throughout Carr's book, right? He has several little short vignettes between some of the chapters, and they're called digressions. I'm simply skipping those in my discussion of the book. Feel free to enlist those or not in your thoughts, in your assignments. But the digressions are, as they say, digressions and not part of the core of the core material. So they're just they are off the radar as far as I'm concerned. So as you're reading chapter 1 of Carr's text, I mean, the first question, right, as a deep reader is there a single central claim that makes this entire chapter coherent, right? That a single claim around which all other claims seem to orbit, or support, or illustrate, or exemplify in some way. And I think it's very clear in all of Carr's chapters. The answer is yes. There is a main claim, and in chapter 1, I think it's as simple as saying something like what I've written here. His main claim is that he thinks he's losing his ability to concentrate, and he blames online reading. Okay? Now, he says several things here. This is my sort of pithy summary of his main claim, right? At times, Carr talks about concentration, at times, thinking, at times, contemplation. But if you continue to read through that chapter, you realize what he's really talking about is not one's ability to think, but one specific aspect of thinking. He's talking about concentration. Okay, so he thinks he's losing his ability to concentrate, and he blames what again I'm saying more specifically online reading. Now here's a case where I think Carr could have done a better job in writing this book. At times he refers to the villain as the internet, the net, the web, online reading, technology, right? He uses all of these different terms when really he's not talking about any of those. They're far too broad, right? Certainly isn't talking about technology. My glasses are technology. He's not complaining about those. He's not talking about the internet. What he's talking about is the distraction mechanisms built into a sliver of the internet, the part of the internet we use, say, on the web, right? The web kind of sits on top of the internet. When I email you in my MyNU account, I'm using the internet, but I'm not on the web, right? And unless you're viewing it through your web browser. So there's a difference between the internet and the web. There's a difference between the web and texting, and it's important to think that through and really understand what Carr is criticizing, okay? So he's criticizing the fact that after the advent of the internet came the advent of the web. And on the web, there became the opportunity to communicate multimodally, meaning you have text, you have links now that you can click to go to other texts, which draw you off of that main first text. You have images embedded. You might have a right or left alley with ads, animation. You know how it goes, right? Video embedded. So he's talking about that distracted nature that's keeping us from reading with concentration in a linear fashion. Okay, so I try to sort of summarize all of that in this possible first main claim. I think you could argue that that Carr has a different main claim in mind. It's related, of course, but you could in fact quote a single sentence of his, which I've done so here in the PowerPoint, as an example of his main claim. Whoops, sorry. This sentence here. And so, yeah, calm, focused, undistracted, the linear mind is being pushed aside by a new kind of mind that wants and needs to take in and dole out information in short, disjointed, often overlapping bursts. The faster, the better. That might work as a main claim, but there's a lot going on in this sentence. From the point of view of reviewing the book for readers for your assignment, your book review, I think this is not nearly as concise and clear as summarizing the chapter in your own words and writing something as simple as this first main claim. Okay, but somewhere in this ballpark is his main claim, right? He's losing the ability to concentrate, and he blames online reading because online reading is pushing us into a distracted mindset where information is short and choppy and fast. Now, notice, please, that chapter 1 is mostly autobiographical. He's talking about himself. He's this writer. He's finding that he can no longer read long-form essays. And it's also a bit anecdotal because he then turns to some other folks, Karp, Friedman, and Davis, and finds that, they're having the same experience. So a kind of closing point that's important for the book's structure, for the book's rationale or significance is, he has this problem with the internet, and he thinks he's not alone. It's not only, his problem might as well be society's problem, and therefore the book has some significance. Okay, so there's a lot of other things going on in this chapter, and of course, feel free to write about it in your review or email me with questions. But I think if you overlook the central claim, you'll be confused. Okay, so chapter 1 leads us up to this question, right? Is the internet changing the nature of our mind? In Carr's mind, he thinks, for the worse. Chapter 2 is a very different sort of chapter. Now, there's a lot going on in this chapter, and it's important to understand the historical discussion Carr offers, but you can't overlook the main claim. And the main claim he's offering here is simply, right, it's that claim of neuroplasticity. He wants to assure the reader that the adult human brain is indeed neuroplastic. Okay, what does this mean, neuroplasticity? It just means you should think of the brain as an organism unto itself, right? And as any organism does, it has a relationship with its environment. And so the adult human brain is continually adapting to its cognitive environment. It is, in Carr's words, right, literally rewiring itself through habituation to the cognitive demands placed on it from its environment. Okay? And so this is what he means by neuroplastic. Now, this view overturns a long-standing older mechanical view of the brain, which was that the brain worked sort of like a clock or another machine, right? That once it was developed effectively in childhood, that it just sort of stayed in its same structure and ticked on throughout your life until you were older and it started to decay. But that the brain, the old view is, that you think of the brain as essentially a machine. And in that old view, as you can imagine, how much is a machine, like a clock, affected by, its environment? Not very much, right? The machine just sort of is intrinsically ticking along, working without a lot of care for the environment. And so what Carr needs to do in this chapter is assure us that that old mechanical view has been overturned by modern science in the 20th century, and that most experts agree that the brain doesn't work like a clock, that it's neuroplastic and works more like an organism, and is always amenable to change owing to the pressures put on it. Okay, so Nietzsche's Writing Ball, a really good example of neuroplasticity. London Cab Drivers, another really good example of neuroplasticity. But if in your book review you focus on the Nietzsche's Writing Ball or the London Cab Drivers, because they're more vivid and they're interesting stories, you've missed the point, right? You've missed the point. These are examples of the main claim, but they are not the main claim. The main claim is, as I said before, right? Carr's main claim in chapter 2, is to establish that the brain is neuroplastic, and he offers evidence in support of it, and he offers 2 good examples here. Okay, so That's important to distinguish. And this is what I mean by deep reading rather than impressionistic reading. Impressionistic readers could read this and say, the Nietzsche's Writing Ball, the London Cab Drivers, those were interesting stories. They have these interesting skills, and oh, how you, the typing device you use kind of affects how you write. Yeah, those are interesting, but they're missing the central core, the core claim of the chapter. And why is this neuroplasticity important? This is where deep reading matters. I hope you'll stop and really think through, why does Carr need chapter 2 in this argument? Well, he needs chapter 2 because neuroplasticity is the link between literacy and cognition, right? Neuroplasticity explains why our reading style shapes our thinking style. If the brain were not neuroplastic, how we read wouldn't affect how we think. And his entire book would fall apart, kind of like a house of cards, because that his central thesis is, right, that it's his online reading style that has caused him to lose his concentration. That wouldn't happen if the brain acted like a clock in this old mechanical view, but it would happen, it is explainable, if the brain is indeed neuroplastic. Okay. Now this is really important, the not what, but how. Carr is not saying, right, he is not saying that, reading affects the mind because what you read, you learn what you read and therefore your mind has this reading knowledge. He's not saying it's a matter of content. He's saying how we read affects how we think, right? And so the key there is, for an example, this would be along the lines of Carr's argument and exemplifying neuroplasticity. If we spent the next 10 years reading only bulleted lists, like grocery store lists and other kinds of lists, right? If everything we did were simply short sentences or phrases in bulleted lists, we would over time develop a thinking style that was also structured in terms of bulleted lists, right? In other words, that genre, the bulleted list or the to-do list, we would then internalize, and that would, through habituation, it would be how we think. So a society that reads only bulleted lists for a living thinks in bulleted lists, talks in bulleted lists, perceives the world and codifies that through bulleted lists. It's one kind of consciousness. On the other hand, if we were to spend the next 10 years reading only long novels, we would start to, through cognitive habituation, we would start thinking in terms of not bulleted lists, but long novels, longer stories with richly described and developed characters, scenes, plots, right? Tension, resolution. And we would, if a whole society were doing this sort of novel-based society, reading novels, they would then talk. They would be thinking in terms of the novel. They would talk, mimicking those styles, and perceive their world more narratively. Okay, that's the key here to neuroplasticity. Is it's not that the content of the reading is shaping our thinking. It's the style or genre of the reading, like the form of reading, that shapes the form of our thinking. So that's key. Okay, I think I've said enough here. Good luck with the readings, and please come back tomorrow, watch the next lecture, and continue with Carr's text. I hope you enjoy it.